for real significant changes in the way that we charge for bandwidth, the way we package it, the degree of bandwidth caps that we have to impose, and all those sorts of things that come under the network neutrality rubric. Right? Wireline really isn't going to be affected as much. Wireless is really going to be an issue. Now, I'm going to start drilling down now into some of the actual things that people tell me are keeping them awake at night. Obviously, competition is the main thing. If you look at these bar charts, what you can see is there just are no monopoly markets left. Now, dirty little secret here is I came out of the cable industry in the early 80s. And the one thing no cable executive ever said in public, but they would tell me in private, as long as I wouldn't print it, is that monopolies are very good if you can get them. Right? Unregulated monopolies are even better. And then they'd start to laugh at that point, because cable in the early 1980s was essentially an unregulated monopoly. That's not quite the case anymore, but even they have got to deal with those kinds of issues. Right? Now, one of the really big changes that's happened, I'm going to talk now about local access. About 1995, 1996, I'd be on panels with people who were telco engineers, and we'd be talking about fiber to the whatever, and we'd start running the pro formas. And literally, from time to time on a panel, somebody would say, well, we're going to build this network, and we're going to get this kind of ARPU, and therefore it's not a big deal, right? And then you would ask them, well, what penetration assumptions are you assuming? Oh, the same as voice. All right, big difference. The difference between a monopoly market and a competitive market is every time you make a capital investment, you have to assume you're going to get maybe 20% penetration, 30% penetration for a service, any single service. You never get 90% penetration. Obviously, that dramatically changes your notions of what's my payback. All right, so everybody who's in the business now really has to look at low penetration of services. And the other thing is no killer apps. If you look at the things people want to do, the bar chart there on the left, that has the sort of yellow and blue colors. If you ask people, what do you really want to do with your mobile, assuming I can give you anything you want? Some of this, some of that. The problem is a little bit like what people do when they watch television. Every study you ever see will tell you that most people watch 7 channels, 12 channels, something like that. None of us watches typically more than 12 channels, right? The problem is each of us has a different package of 7 to 12. So the same thing's going to happen in data services and voice services. People are going to want some things really a lot, but they're going to be small volume markets. So as you go forward, all you're thinking about new services has to be based on the premise that nothing you come up with is going to drive 50 to 60% penetration. Not going to happen. So that's why we're talking about IMS and all these other platforms. You literally have to create a service creation and service delivery platform that is so efficient. It doesn't matter that all you've got is 3% penetration for one service, right? Because there will be another service, and that'll be 5%. There will be a third service, and that'll be 12%. You add them all up, and your network still makes sense, but there's no killer app, and you can't do capital planning based on that. Now, the other issue is bundling. All of you are familiar with triple plays, quadruple plays, that sort of thing. Why does everybody agree this is the way to go? Well, the issue is, again, the fundamental business model has changed. Back in the old days, the cable guys could safely assume we are going to get 70 to 80% penetration for a video service, period. Everybody did. Right? Telcos could safely assume we're going to get 90% voice penetration. Everybody always has had that. Then you introduce competition. What happens? Well, the first thing is everybody loses market share. So instead of having 70, you start dropping to 69, 68, 67, and the cable operators are still dropping, right? Now, the same thing happens on the flip side to telcos. We've got landline voice. Penetration starts to drop. 90 to 89 to 88 to 87, right? And these things do not change. These lines are just rock solid. They're not going to change for some time, which means everybody's in, number one, a market share battle. The second thing is, what do you do as a rational executive if the number of customers you've got is dropping and you can't stop that? No way to stop it. It's going to keep dropping. Well, it's a real simple answer for that. Sell more stuff to the customers you have. That's where this whole bundling, triple play, quadruple play thing comes from. We're going to have fewer customers in aggregate, so we have to sell each customer more stuff. Okay? And this is a trend that is not going to change in my lifetime. And it's called scope economy rather than scale. Not that scale isn't important, but you've got to do it. Now, the other thing is, and again, going back to this surveyed data of CEOs, the third most important consideration that people are thinking is going to drive all of our strategic planning for the foreseeable future, aside from business model transformation and revenue growth, is mergers and acquisitions. Why? Why does everybody agree this is the case? Well, again, in a competitive market, organic growth is very difficult. Everybody's got this problem. So what do you do when you can't grow enough growth internally? You start buying the growth. You go out of territory. If you're a LEC, that means attacking a neighboring city. If you're in France, it means going to Poland. And this is the same story. It's happening globally, everywhere. People essentially are buying growth by expanding out of territory. It's a good strategy. It will work and keep working until there are no more things left to buy. Right? There is an end game here, and that is when we're finally consolidated, you cannot grow that way anymore. You're going to have to grow internally. But again, good news, we've got some time on that. The other issue that really comes up is Google is more a concern to most global executives, or substitute another name if you like, than the cable operators, which kind of shocks me being in the US market where cable really is very important as a competitor to local telcos. Well, truth is, the cable guys act just like us. So that's not as disruptive. Google does not act like us. That's highly disruptive. You will be hearing from a number of speakers over the next few days that are in the communications business, in the data business, in the entertainment business, don't own networks. And you might think, well, yeah, lots of people don't own networks. Very established model. Well, that's true. But they don't think like we do. Right? They're application providers. They innovate very quickly. And if you look at these pictures, all I'll point out is that Moore's Law is one of the reasons this is possible now. It's actually possible to create applications very fast, very cheaply, get global distribution very quick, and then you just got to go viral. How many people like this thing? And if enough people like the thing, you're in business, right? Another big deal, obviously, wireless substitution. We don't know yet how many people, businesses or consumers, are going to decide, my mobiles work really well. They're very personal, they're very capable. I can do just about anything on them, in the same 5 years, that I could do on my PC. It's in my pocket, it's in my purse. Why do I need a wireline? Now, what you have to do is drill down to the numbers. So here's the exercise. You look at the number of lines telcos have lost in a given market in the last quarter or year. You look at the number of lines that cable operators or other competitors have picked up in the last year. And then you do subtraction. And there's always going to be a number down there that's bigger than those market share shifts would suggest. Right? That's probably a reasonable predictor of wireless substitution. There are people who are simply saying, I don't think I need to have the wireline, right? Now, the way I work is I'm in a totally distributed, flat organization, basically work out of my home. And I actually have been thinking about why I keep the wireline for some time. The answer has always been 911 and fax, right? Well, about 8 months ago, I actually realized how many minutes I had paid for that I wasn't using. And it was a shockingly high number, like 24,000 rollover minutes on the account that I'd actually paid for already. I thought, all right, that's it, I'm done. If I'm already paying for these minutes and I'm not using them, even for business, I'm going mobile only. That's the way I live now. Quality isn't as good. There are times when I wish I had a landline, but I'm not going back, right? Now my wife might tell you a different story. Don't get panicked by it.